Hello, my name is Jack Pierce and I'm here today to walk you through my level on Unreal Engine for 2D Games Engines, Assignment 1. So let's click play and start the game. The sign here is for mainly giving a backstory to the player about why they're here and what is their purpose in this level. So let's just go along. I've placed these switches all across my level to signal that these switches will always move these platforms. If the player decides to just go along and see if they can walk on the lava, there's also a trap in that lava what will cause them to die and lose 10 health, which is an easy way to show that lava is bad if it walks on. So let's get the switch and it will start moving. All my platforms in this game move at 2.5, which is I think is a reasonable speed for the players, as with 2.5 it's not too slow and it's not too quick for the player to keep missing it, and it's not too slow that it feels like the player is always wasting time on the movers. I decided to place a checkpoint here, so that means if ever needed they don't have to come back on this mover. 3 hearts are here because of the next traps that are in front of us, which are the swinging maces, what will take off 1 damage each time. There is also a floor trigger there to trigger these maces and the door opening. This trap here basically makes sure that the player knows they have to wait, as it's impossible to make it all the way along without taking damage. So it forces the player to know that they have to go in between these maces and take their time with the trap. As so. With this, there is a floor trigger right in front of me, what will lead the player down to a pit of darts, what will end up shooting them until they die. The player has 1.5-second delay on this trapdoor to be able to get the jump and get to the next side. It is impossible for the player to make the jump straight away, so it kind of forces the player to go a bit more onto the trap and be able to make the jump, so the trap isn't pointless. As you can see, the dart's shooting me and the player will die. So let's go past all this again and time that jump perfectly. The jump can be differently timed, it was just a lot of trial and error. You can't jump too late, but you can jump a bit too early and fall to your death. I placed another checkpoint here so the player didn't have to go all the way back, and I've also placed a cogwheel to open this door. This trap forces the player to learn how to crouch, as going along normally would end up with the player's death. So with this, it teaches the player to crouch and wait for its time. Like so. As again, another switch to signal that these need to be moved. These movers are moved by them switches. Here is another sign or helper, whatever, what would give another piece of backstory or dialogue for the player to read. This helper here basically explains that nothing is beyond this point. I would probably end up placing a wall or something else in this level, as I don't think that the player needs too much text to help them. So we hit that switch, come back and wait like the sign said, and wait for our mover to come and get us. As you can see, 2.5 speed, not too slow and not too fast, so the player has enough time to get onto it and be able to get off safely. 3 hearts here because the trap coming up next is a combination trap, which is fireballs hitting the player from the floor and traps moving down into a bottomless pit. So basically it stops the player from reaching the end and will have to either die or find another way out, as I will show you now. As you can see, this time I did not make it, but as for the level tutorial, I will show you by just ending myself right now, letting my character take damage. As I'll show you now, Time that a bit wrong. As I will show you now what the end leads, because the player is meant to not get through this trap and come back to the beginning, as the pathway is underneath my feet. But for the skilled players, you get rewarded, so I decided to make a skill route where if the player can just get over there just in time and reach here, they will get a checkpoint and a door will open up. This will give another dialect saying that the player has skill, and it shouldn't be up here, but it will give you some rewards as more health and more weapons. So the player can now go along, take as much damage as needed, and be able to make it to this part of my level. This is one trap what I'm kind of pleased of, because it basically requires a mover to come out through the lava, as the player can see no other way of getting through. But with this mover, it only gives a limited amount of time that the player can go from one point to the other. As you can see, trapdoor opens and leads the player down to the next platform. The spinners here provide that the player knows that going this way is not the way, so they have to go back, and then they'll see the checkpoint knowing that they're going the right way. I decided to add some jumping platforms to my level, as I find it quite fun with having to control in the air. So as we can see, the player will have a limited amount of time to make that. That'll be a trap down there later. But the player will have to use timing correctly and going through this to be able to make sure that I can easily pass through the spinners. This is on each one of the levels, which I find very amusing. The player can take one piece of damage and still get through, but as I can see, it will be improved later on, which I can always do. And the player will finally reach the finish right here and be able to do. Thank you for your time. The level for an average player takes about 3 to 4 minutes. As I was showing you all the parts of my level, it took me 7. I hope this suffices. Goodbye.